Good afternoon from Jakarta, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to FPCI Middle Power Studies Network virtual public discussion. I am Ziza, and I will be the master of ceremony for today's event. Ladies and gentlemen, Middle Power Studies Network is a unit dedicated to study the role of middle power countries in the 21st century. We engage scholars, policymakers, practitioners, and relevant stakeholders in middle power countries and around the globe to explore the role of middle powers in shaping global affairs. Today's discussion is titled Punching Above Weight, Turkey's Middle Power Policy at Strategic Crossroads. For this, I am pleased to welcome over 150 registrants from over 20 countries tuning in virtually. To name a few, we have audiences from countries such as Indonesia, Malaysia, Australia, Turkey, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, the US, Sweden, Germany, China, Kenya, Pakistan, among others. We would also like to welcome our colleagues from the diplomatic corps that are also tuning in today's discussion. First of all, we would like to welcome our speakers, Professor Mita Çelikpala, Professor and Vice Rector at Kadir Has University and Board Member of International Relations Council of Turkey, and Ambassadors Michael Sahlin, Distinguished Associate Fellow at CIPRI, and Swedish Ambassador to Turkey from 1995 to 1998, among many other hats he has. Thank you for joining us today. Moving on, without further ado, let me hand over the screen to our moderator for today's discussion, Jenny Sarwinata, Middle Power Studies Network Coordinator. Jenny, you may have the screen.
Thank you, Ziza. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, Professor Mithat, Ambassador Michael Sahlin. Welcome, everyone, to those tuning in. Just a bit of background. So in FPCI Middle Power Studies Network, we are constantly digging deeper into various aspects of middle power strategy. So previously, we have a discussion on middle powers policies on multilateral reform, on Palestine statehood, their views on the world order, the geopolitical shift in the Middle East and the roles of middle powers there, and many other issues. And we also discussed specific country. And in the past, we had discussion on Saudi Arabia's foreign policy, among others. And today, we have an interesting one to discuss, which is Turkey, because we see Turkey as a middle power. It has been increasingly active in regional and global affairs. So for that, we want to dive deep into Turkey's foreign policy and how also it positions itself in the region, how it views the world order, and many other relevant issues to be discussed throughout the discussion. So for that, let me first start by inviting Professor Mithat to give your overview of Turkey foreign policy over the course of time to basically set the scene of the discussion, giving us what we have to know about Turkey foreign policy today. And also, if I may add one point, Professor Mithat, if in Indonesia, we have a guiding principle in our foreign policy, independent and active, bebas aktif in Bahasa Indonesia, meaning over the course of time, with any sort of geopolitical development, this remains to be independent and active remains to be our guiding principles and posture. What is it in Turkey as well? Perhaps the audience would like to also know further about it. So Prof. Mithat, you may have the floor.
Thank you, Jenny. It's a pleasure and privilege, of course, to take part in this FPCI's Middle Power Studies Network Visual Public Forum. But of course, together with Ambassador Michael Sahlin is also a pleasure and honor for me. And I hope we can have a kind of a productive public forum, or virtual forum, to discuss Turkey, Turkish foreign policy, and what's going on. Now, of course, I'm going to try to set the discussion, and Ambassador Sahlin's contribution or interventions make it much more understandable and critical, of course. And then, depending on questions and comments, I try to expand my points regarding Turkey's foreign policy. From your point, Indonesia's case, how can I start? I can say that what sets Turkey's foreign policy apart is its aspiration, as articulated by the foreign minister, to be a fully independent, effective, and influential actor which sets the international agenda. Of course, this is very, promising expectation, but Turkey is an actor in all those regions, and under the unique presidential motto of the Century of Turkey, which symbolizes Turkey's aspiration to reclaim its historical influence and become a major player, not only in the regional issues, but in global affairs as well. Turkey's foreign policy is set to take a more autonomous and self-interested direction last couple of decades. But Turkey's strategic location has been a key factor in its influence across various world regions or neighboring regions of Turkey. And as a middle or regional power, we use regional power in Turkey as well. As a middle or regional power, Turkey's central position has been instrumental in shaping different regions, from the Balkans to the Caucasus, the Black Sea, and the Mediterranean. And its influence extends beyond those regions as well, with a presence in the Middle East. You see Turkey there, Central Asia, Africa, and very lately even in South America. And this expansion is a direct result of Turkey's shared past, rooted in common, experience of history, religion, and culture, which forms a key foundation for Ankara's influence in all those different regions, if there is. And this influence, Turkey's influence, is not limited to political, diplomatic, security, and economic realms. Those are the realms that we are following Turkey's activeness and influence. But, the country has also successfully projected its soft power, as evidenced by its educational initiatives and popularity of Turkish television series, for example, across Africa, the Middle East, and the South Caucasus, and the Western Balkans even. And you see Turkish Airlines, for example, as a company serving as a real connector of the East to the West and South to the North, and further demonstrates the multifaceted nature of Turkey's influence. Therefore, I can say that we have a Turkey as a soft and hard power, trying to be effective middle or regional power to shape all those regions as well as global issues. And at the heart of power and of the spectrum, the hard power side of Turkey's policies, and it is reflected in the growing prominence of Turkey's defense industry products. For example, TB2 drones in modern battlefields, and you see Turkey with the military operations in Syria, Iraq, Libya, and Africa, in other regions as well. And this confluence of cultural exports and technological advancements paints a picture of country with a clear ambitions, diplomatic skills, economic expansion, and powerful military capabilities. And Turkey's success can be attributed to its multifaceted and adaptable approach in this equation. By deploying a diverse toolbox of diplomatic instruments and targeted communication, Ankara has emerged as a significant regional player or a middle power in all those related regions. And this adaptability underscores Turkey's dynamism and flexibility in its foreign policy. And Turkey's strategy enhances its image as a strong and reliable partner for regional actors. This is very important. And however, a closer look reveals a more nuanced reality in all those regions and issues. And therefore, Turkey must navigate a careful and delicate course between national economic anxieties, escalating security concerns, and changing global order. And the past 2 decades, we have seen Turkey open to the above-mentioned regions. At the same time, recent economic challenges exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine have pushed Ankara towards closer collaboration with all those regional actors. And this delicate balance underscores the complexity of Turkey's foreign policy as it seeks to diversify partnership to overcome isolation and assert strategic autonomy by distancing itself from the West while maintaining connections that serve its interests. This is the delicacy of Turkish foreign policy last 2 decades. And I want to conclude my introductory part by saying that Turkey is a NATO member country. This is one of the main pillars of Turkey's security and foreign policy making, and an EU candidate country, despite the fact that we have some issues with our Western partners, as I'm sure that Ambassador will open up this part or aspect. And those factors, which means a NATO membership and EU candidacy, those factors, despite some troubling and delicate relations with our Western partners very lately, made Turkey a middle power from economic, military, and political perspectives. This is one of the main pillars of Turkish foreign and security policy last, I don't know, century, as well as last 2 decades. And Turkey, a middle power from economic, military, and political perspective, this is the fact. And our neighbors, as well as key nations all over expanded perimeters of those neighborhoods, see Turkey as a transforming factor or actor since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Thus, which means from 1990s, thus Turkey is a Western actor with great potential to transform in all its regions, but at the end to be a fully independent, effective, and influential actor which sets the international agenda. As I said from at the beginning, this is the narrative of the foreign ministry or foreign minister himself, necessitates capacity and capabilities as well as partners and allies. And therefore, Turkey is a kind of a Western actor trying to shape its own regions, but try to establish much more autonomous policies and try to follow its own interests. And I may try to expand my discussion after Ambassador's comments and criticisms.
Thank you, Professor Mithat. There are several points that we would like to dig deeper later throughout the discussion. Let me invite Ambassador Sahlin to give comments and to also add your views on Turkey from the Europe point of views. And we know it is at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. We know it's a big part of NATO, important player in geopolitical development of Europe. So please, Ambassador Sahlin, give your overview as well. Are still Ambassador Sahlin?
Yeah, thank you, Professor. You made you gave me a full hand of topics to discuss. I'm talking to you now from the coast of the Baltic Sea, where I have a summer house, and I have been following Turkish affairs since I was ambassador in Turkey in the late 90s, and I've seen so many changes, so many volte-faces over time, and I can assure listeners today that to follow Turkish foreign affairs developments is always interesting, never boring. It is a fascinating subject, and that is because for me as a Swede, we have a long history with Turkey, seeing Russia at that time in the history of the historical past as a common opponent, common enemy at the time. So, and then in recent years, many Turks have left Turkey and now live in Sweden. Some of Turkish background, others are of Kurdish background, and the presence of a Kurdish minority here in Sweden, of course, had something to do with the problems having Turkey accept Sweden as a full member of NATO, which we applied for as a result of Russian aggression to Ukraine, and the way that was a complete shift of the security landscape. We have had a centuries-long tradition of political neutrality and non-alignment, and but the Russian aggression against Ukraine changed everything, and that applies to Finland as well. So we had an interesting, lengthy discussion with Turkey about what it took for us to have Turkey accept our application for full membership, and that has somehow raised further the interest in Sweden for Turkey and Turkey's role. I see Turkey's role as predestined by its size and its composition in various ways, and its history, imperial history also, and also, of course, geopolitical location, being exactly the bridge between North and South and East and West in various ways, and that never stops being interesting. In recent years, we have seen an element of collision between Turkey's economic needs to get out of its economic crises, and therefore using the means as mending fences with developing relations to the EU, individual EU countries, and also, of course, the US. and this has been a struggle because there have been some strains. Now, in recent years, the EU has decided on its part to take one further step in enlargement. And the main reason for that input into the policies of the EU, which had recently had the elections, by the way, and there's an element of increase of rightist movements in Europe into the composition of the EU Parliament, which will reassemble soon. But the ambition now is to kickstart negotiations with Ukraine and also with Moldova, having some promises made also to Georgia and also to remaining Western Balkans countries in its broader enlargement policies. And that, of course, has put the question of Turkey's aspirations for membership or the membership perspective. What about it? It has been hindered. I mean, the development of a meaningful, fuller membership negotiation by various things. One is perceptions of Turkey as a democratically problematic country, if I may put it this way. And there is also the issue of Cyprus, which is, it had its 50 years anniversary last Saturday, and both government and opposition were there to celebrate or to manifest unity within Turkey on the question of Cyprus, which has been festering and left unsolved. I mean, the unification issue for all these years after 1974 and the Turkish operation, which changed the conditions on the island, and it has been a frozen conflict for all these years, and that has been one of several problems within or from the point of view of the EU and Turkish-EU relations. What we can say now is that Turkey has reminded the world of its indispensability as a partner because its size, its ambitions, its geographic location as a Black Sea country, as a Middle East country, as a European country, as a Muslim country, as a country which seeks more diversification of its roles, its identities. It is discussing now to perhaps become a member of BRICS, so the grouping of countries mainly from the global south. And you have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Also, you have the Pan-Turkic Organization. All these organizations somehow defining Turkey as a country which by necessity must have a very active foreign policy. You have seen the big delegation from Turkey led by the foreign minister to Niger in West Africa, and the big discussion now being whether Turkey can play a role also on behalf of its Westernness in replacement of the fact that in Niger, as in other West African countries, Somalia and some other country, where after military coups, the presence of French military and also US militaries have been put under question. Maybe Turkey can be playing there a positive role. And then you have of course, the question of Libya and elsewhere. So Turkey's active foreign policy, I see that as a natural thing, a necessity following its location and broader developments in global politics. But the main issue, I think, is how to have the Turkish balancing acts in its foreign policy, balancing being a NATO member since 1952, being an candidate country for the EU since 1999 under the Finnish presidency at the time, being economically completely dependent on having meaningful links to the Western world, its banks, its monetary centers, etc. while seeking to diversify relations, because Turkey is simply too big to be just following suit. It has its own identity, it has its own interests. It is also a Middle East country. It has links with Hamas, contrary to what the US is having. And of course, the Gaza disaster has played a big role in adding further problems in US-Turkey relations. And then you have the situation in Iraq and Syria, and the question of Turkey's perception of it having a legitimate anti-terror operation, whereas the US and other Western countries, Sweden included, would see Kurdish actors in the area also, and perhaps primarily as an actor indispensable in the fight against ISIS. And the role of ISIS, of course, is well known in Indonesia as well. So in summary, what I've said so far is no objection to anything that the professor was saying. I'm just adding it from the point, adding some dimensions of it being a balancing act where Turkey's defense industry, for example, you mentioned TB2, and the family of drones that Turkey is developing has played an indispensable role in the defense, in Ukraine's defense against Russian aggression. But Turkey is having a balancing act. It doesn't share the Western policies concerning sanctions against Russia. It seeks to preserve the margins of whenever there will be peace negotiations. Perhaps Turkey can play a useful role in creating peace between Russia and Ukraine, since Turkey belongs to those few countries that have meaningful contacts with both sides. In the case of Gaza, I have seen that Turkey has not had the ambition to be a mediating country whenever the time is ripe for a peace settlement. Qatar has been playing that role, and Egypt, rather than Turkey, because Turkey has a strong anti-Netanyahu government view on perception, which is shared, I should add, by many in the US and in Sweden also. It is extremely complicated. So in summary, all the things that necessitate a very active foreign policy is a question of trying to transform what are challenges to assets, using it, playing along with partners into developing all those challenges into something which will serve Turkey's own interests, while preserving mainly its character as a NATO country. You, Professor, was stressing that this is one of the key pillars. Of course, things cannot be completely unproblematic if Turkey, remaining a Western country, a NATO member, a EU candidate, but having been destined to have other interests not fully compatible with or identical with other Western countries. So a balancing act which is skillfully conducted in various continents by Turkey. I would stop there as my comments.
Thank you, Ambassador Sahlin. I think this one is the interesting point you raised up that you mentioned, and I remember there's a words from the former foreign saying Turkey as a country between East and West. And I want to raise to Professor Russia issue where, as Ambassador Sahlin said, Turkey is not sharing Western policies. It shows a distinct posture. On the bottom line, it boldly condemned Russia for its invasion. Yet it managed to broker the Black Sea grain deal. It facilitated peace talks. How did it get there? How did Turkey get to this posture, and why so? Professor Mithat.
Yes, okay, Jenny. You can hear me, huh? Those are the issues. I agree with the Ambassador Sahin as well. Turkey is observing a kind of a delicate balancing act because, all those regions are full of instabilities all around Turkey, from north to south, east to west. And within this balance, Turkey is a significant geopolitical actor straddling Europe and Asia, has often needed to navigate complex diplomatic waters. This is the case. We call it as a kind of a delicate balancing act. This balancing act is one of those pillars to define Turkey's position maybe since the establishment of modern Turkish Republic, because of all those instabilities and geographies. But as a NATO member and a candidate for EU accession, Turkey's foreign policy decisions naturally attract international attention, particularly concerning its relationship with Russia. But Russia is a giant there, and as you said, Turkey is located at the end of, or the easternmost part of Europe and westernmost part of Asia. And then how to define Turkey, a Western or Eastern actor, or European or Asian actor, or Middle Eastern, Black Sea, the Caucasus, the Balkans, they are part of Turkish identity, and those connections with the historical realities necessitates to define Turkey in a complex manner. This is the limitation. Of course, we have many issues in domestic discussion as well, related with the foreign policy and security policy related issues and identity related issues. But, this is Turkey, and we need to understand Turkey from this perspective. And the imposition of sanctions on Russia by Western nations in response to various geopolitical tensions, including the annexation of Crimea and involvement in the conflict in eastern Ukraine, has placed Turkey in a difficult position. This is the case, and this is the reason why we say Turkey is observing a kind of a delicate balancing act. But for policymakers in Ankara, or for Ankara in general, Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 was a grim reminder of the ongoing volatility in the wider Black Sea region. And this wider Black Sea region is part of Europe, as well as part of Asia and Eurasia. And this is Turkey's close neighborhood. This is very important first. And resorting to its age-old conventional diplomatic tool of neutrality, despite the fact that Turkey is a NATO member country, Ankara government has sought to keep equidistance from warring parties, but also made clear that it does not condone Russia's land grab. Even before the invasion, Turkey condemned Russia's recognition of the so-called republics of Donetsk and Luhansk, claiming that this was a violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity, effectively undermining the Minsk processes. And on the day of invasion, Turkey rejected Russian claims and stated that the military operation an unacceptable violation of international law. They called for immediate cessation of this illegal and unlawful act of violence. And this is totally a Western attitude as well. And then on the third day of the invasion, Turkey, invoked Article 19 of Montreux Convention, and this is a very important convention for the security setup in the region, declaring that the developments amounted to the war in the region, shut down the passage of warring countries' warships through the Turkish Straits, that means Russia and Ukraine. And, for the first time in all over Europe, maybe on a global arena, Turkey was the first actor to call the Ukrainian issue as a war, and then asked other countries not to send their warships to the Black Sea either, which means even including NATO member non-literal countries, navies, to keep the balance there. This is also a discussion point, but after 2 years, this is very complicated. I can say that more than 2 years through the war, the geopolitical climate remains precarious, and many observers point to the delicate nature of Russian-Turkish relations. As much as the pundits emphasize geopolitics as a dictating determinant of the ground, we should and indeed could not ignore the growing trade and energy ties between Ankara and Moscow, demonstrating the resilience of non-political aspects of relations that undergird Turkey's neutrality, without which the balance of power in the Black Sea region could not easily tip. Then, as you asked, Turkey's compliance or non-compliance with the sanctions against Russia has been a subject of criticism and analysis that makes Turkey, whether a European actor or not, what kind of a NATO member country or European actor. But, I have to say that the net response to such a kind of a question is neither a straightforward yes or no. Why? This is related with Turkey's security and foreign policy and decision-making processes. I can say that the level of Turkey's compliance with the sanctions against Russia has evolved over time and has been influenced by various factors, such as economic interests, geopolitical considerations, and diplomatic relations, not only with Russia, but with the West as well. First of all, I have to say that despite geopolitical differences, economic cooperation between Ankara and Moscow has widened over the years, particularly in the energy trade, creating an interdependency that cannot be simply discarded. Moreover, existing pipelines like Turk Stream, Blue Stream, and, in addition to those pipelines, we have Akkuyu nuclear power plant construction underscore Turkey's significant energy ties with Russia. And while Turkey benefiting from trade and energy cooperation with Russia, it also seeks to maintain strong economic ties with Western allies. This is the delicacy of the balance. Balancing these interests requires careful calibration. And compliance with Western sanctions at the early stages would have allowed Turkey, of course, to demonstrate a kind of a solidarity with its NATO partners and align with the broader Western bloc. Still, it would have hurt its painstakingly established connections with Russia. But moreover, Turkey, in principle, does not comply with the international sanctions unless imposed by the UN or NATO. And this is the limitation for Turkey, because our Western partners taking all those decisions without Turkish participation. This is a limitation. Turkey would like to be part of decision-making processes. In terms of NATO, Turkey fully complied with all NATO decisions. Without Turkish contribution, NATO cannot take any decision. Therefore, in all and each and every decisions of NATO, including strategy documents, you see Turkish signature, which means Turkey is complying with all those decisions within NATO. Therefore, current Western sanctions are neither a limitation for Turkey. In addition, for example, President Erdogan questioned about the sanctions early on and complained that Turkey's Western allies make decisions without consulting with Turkey and then expect Turkey to follow them blindly. And this is a harsh criticism, of course, of Turkey towards the West. And I can say that the public opinion in Turkey supports this position. And I remember Erdogan stated that a significant portion of our country's natural gas comes from Russia. Then Turkey is building Akkuyu nuclear plant with Russia, and that we cannot reboot the country's industry without Russian energy. And finally, this is a limitation. Finally, Turkey's past experience with sanctions imposed on its neighbors by the US and or the West have not been very pleasant, always costing Turkey more than benefits. I just to remind you what happened in Iraq, in Syria, and other regions. Therefore, Turkey was very quick to comply with those sanctions in those previous cases and paid huge amount of, price. And we remember these limitations. And besides, by the time Russia was sanctioned, Turkey itself was facing declared sanctions, such as US CAATSA sanctions. This is so strange because, those CAATSAs are imposed by US on Turkey, and Turkey is the only allied country with the West or US imposed sanctions on, and therefore it's very critical and delicate issue in Turkey's public opinion, and Erdogan is using this line as well. And we were facing with various types of undeclared embargoes. For example, EU's multiple countries ban on selling military goods to Turkey since its operation in northern Syria, for example. And this is a kind of a limitation from Turkish perspective in domestic manner. And thus, when faced with Western sanctions on Russia, it was a short step for Turkey to declare its non-participation. However, non-participation does not mean complete non-compliance, primarily because of the possibility of secondary sanctions on the country's openly floating Western sanctions on Russia. And as a result, the Ankara government officially has not declared sanctions against Moscow. Yet over 2024, Turkey has shown a growing willingness to mostly, if not entirely, align with the Western sanctions, especially in re-exporting Western-produced goods. This is an issue. And although sanctions are not binding, and Turkey as a sovereign state has no legal obligation to participate or comply, I may say that Ankara is acutely aware that if the country's corporations want to continue playing a role in the global trade, which is conducted through the US-controlled banking system, for example, the SWIFT system, a certain degree of alignment with Western sanctions is necessary. In other words, evading sanctions is undesirable for Turkish companies with significant assets in Western countries since the risks are too high. This is the point. On the other hand, another point, the US and its European allies cannot sever their trade relations with Russia completely. As a result, I can say that Moscow's energy resources continue to flow through whether Turkey, India, or some other actors to Europe. And according to the recent study by the Center of Energy and Clean Air, I guess, they say that Russian oil is arriving to the EU via Turkey. The scheme is neither illegal nor secret due to the loophole in the EU sanctions package about the wholesale of blended, they call it blended fuels into the EU if they are labeled as non-Russian. And there are other couple of research. There are more than 3 billion generated for Moscow from Turkey's ports. This is the case as well. But, this is very complicated issue. I can say that Turkey has emerged as a strategic pit stop for Russian fuel products routed to the EU. That's the case, generating hundreds of millions in tax revenues for the Kremlin's war chest. This is a criticism from the analysis of some institutions all over Europe. And, this is a complicated network. There are other goods and products we are just using, and there's a price cap as well, and Turkey making money. But, investments in renewable energy and exploration projects in the Black Sea and Eastern Mediterranean reflect Turkey's efforts to enhance energy security as well for Europe, and Turkey trying to play a role. That makes everything much more complicated for all the actors, including Turkey. But, we have other issues, not only energy and geopolitical fluctuations, for example. As the ambassador mentioned, Turkey's compliance with the Western sanctions, for example, against Russia, primarily intersects with the regional aspirations and security concerns as well. For instance, the conflict in Syria, where Turkey and Russia back opposing factions, underscores the complexities of their relationship, while Turkey has cooperated with Russia on specific issues such as Astana peace process. It remains wary of Moscow's influence in the region as well. Therefore, increasing compliance with Western sanctions reinforces Turkey's alignment with and signals its commitment to the broader Western security architecture. In short, I may say that Turkey's partial compliance with Western sanctions against Russia is a testament to its diplomatic balancing act. Again, as the ambassador mentioned, economic considerations, energy security imperatives, regional dynamics, and diplomatic pragmatism all shape Turkey's stance on this issue. By broadly aligning with the Western sanctions without openly admitting, Turkey reaffirms its commitment to its allies and demonstrates solidarity with its NATO partners while not unduly alienating or confronting Russia. This is the balancing act. Not to alienate or confront Russia, to engage with Russia as a NATO member country or a Western country. And Ankara's, I may say, that approach is likely to remain nuanced, reflecting its broader foreign policy objectives and the complexities of its relationship with Russia. And as Turkey navigates geopolitical challenges, its compliance with the Western sanctions against Russia will remain critical to its policy calculus. How to balance? And then there are other actors. This is one of the reasons why Turkey is turning its face towards East and as well as the other regions to balance its Western connections. But still, the West is the main economic partner, main security partner, and without working together with the Western allies, it is impossible to balance other actors, and that makes the West an important actor. And the people like myself criticizing the government time to time, how to balance and how to turn its face towards the West. And of course, it's not only Turkey's fault to create such a kind of environment. Our Western partners created, or they have the blame, partly, half and half. And how to move forward, it's a big question mark. But as long as Russia is there, Turkey needs to balance Russia or to engage with Russia and to play with Russia. This is the point that I would like to stop.
Thank you, Professor Mithat. Before I go to Ambassador Sahlin, let me first follow up with this one question, Professor Mithat. We've been talking about between the West and Russia, and that's a focal point in the geopolitical development in Europe. But in the bigger landscape, we have rivalries between the US and China, or the West and China. How do you see Turkey positioning itself, and how is Turkey's relations with China in this case? I want to also get Ambassador Sahlin's view on this particular question. Professor Mithat.
Yeah, of course, China is an actor. China's emergence as an increasingly proactive and assertive global actor over the last decade, especially with the Belt and Road Initiative, has been one of the most critical factors shaping the emerging post-liberal international order. This is the fact. And Turkey acted together with our Western allies to understand China's position. But China is very far from Turkey, and it's not easy to find some experts. And the government's perspective towards China is then very complicated. And in the fragmented and increasingly multipolar global order facilitated the ascending phase of China-Turkey relations, effectively starting with the strategic partnership agreement signed between the two countries in 2010. Up until 2010, China is a kind of an other and faraway nation from Turkey or from Turkey's regions. And this 2010 agreement, strategic partnership agreement, followed by Turkey's Belt and Road Initiative membership in 2015. And evolving expectations from the Asia Infrastructure and Investment Bank, because Turkey has a vivid economy, fragile economy. What Turkey needs is to expand its relations and to find some investors. And therefore, China's actions and expectations or activeness in terms of infrastructure-related issues attracts Turkey's interest and connections. And since then, maybe from 2015, from 2010 today, bilateral relations between the two countries have expanded rapidly through economic cooperation, social exchange, and cultural dialogue. While examining the new momentum in China-Turkey relations over the last period, it is possible to identify three critical turning points, I may say. The first one is related to political economy. The Turkish economy has gradually shifted from the social and regulatory neoliberalism, I may say, associated with the post-Washington consensus norms in the early years of the AKP era to an increasingly hybrid model of state capitalism in later stages. And this is crucial in the context of China and Russia. Both actors seem to have significantly influenced Turkey's new developmentalist approach. With this shift to the presidential system in 2018, we have much more new hybrid model emerged and quickly gained prominence, demonstrating the increased impact of Beijing norms. It's very complicated. It turns out to be a Turkey much more authoritarian, as the ambassador was critical of Turkish democracy. He's right. And what's going on in our environment regions then affects Turkey's policies as well. Then this is the first factor that we see China in this equation. The second critical turning point was the July 15 failed coup d'etat in Turkey in 2016. And Erdogan was very critical of the West after the coup d'etat, especially of the US for failing to oppose the coup and for not extraditing Gülen himself to Turkey, the man who is believed to have planned the coup and who was been living in the US since 1999, and for the EU granting asylum to Gülenists in Europe. It was a safe haven. This is the criticism. And then Turkey was trying to find some other alternative partners, political and economic partners. And these developments substantially deteriorated Turkey's relations with the US and the major European powers and accelerated the shift towards Russia and China axis. This is another aspect. And the third major turning point was associated with the financial breakdown and consecutive currency crisis in Turkey. Turkey has been experiencing since the transition to the new presidential regime in the summer of 2018 again. Those financial fluctuations had both internal and external factors, from the domestic front, the centralized decision-making processes, the significant erosion of investor confidence. There are issues. And then China emerges as a factor. And then I checked the figures and numbers before the meeting that I come to this virtual meeting. By the end of 2023, the Turkish lira's value against the US dollar had fallen by more than 600% over 5 years. And Turkey needs money, and China-Turkey relations are gaining momentum in a correlative fashion. And Turkey has become the second largest recipient after India of those loans from Asia since 2016, with about 4.3 billion US dollars approved for projects in Turkey as of February 2024. This is a new development, and this is China. And economic figures indicate a sharp increase in Chinese FDI in Turkey following Turkey's signing of Belt and Road Initiative Agreement in 2015. This is also important. The figure is from 82 million US dollars to 624 million in the following year, in 2016. Therefore, those are the issues that makes China a factor and actor in Turkey. And in terms of trade, Turkey is an important dependent country, in China bilateral trade. However, the asymmetry between the imports and exports with China is much more critical than overall trade. What will happen in the future, we don't know. And for the political matters, of course, we have different issues. For example, Uyghur issue, Xinjiang issue. They are the factors affecting Turkey's domestic politics as well. Therefore, I don't see China a critical factor and actor in Turkey's foreign and security policy for the moment. But Turkey sees China as an actor, as a middle power. We need to establish better relations with our West and East. And China, India, and other Asian countries are emerging as a potential partners for Turkey. But how will it happen? I don't know, because Turkey do not see China or the others as a ally, strategic ally in terms of security and global peace and, how can I say, balances.
Thank you, Professor Mithat. Let me invite Ambassador Sahlin to comment on this, and adding to that as well, Ambassador Sahlin, you also touch upon this point as well. We see it as a bridge country between East and West, and what about the North and the South? Would you consider Turkey as part of more on the global South and behavior-wise as well, Ambassador Sahlin?
Yeah. It takes some thinking to choose what to comment on, because there are so many things up in there now. Thank you, Mithat Bey, for what you said. Concerning China, I would say, and I need also to add now, Jenny, the factor of a possible new administration in the US and what that will mean. I will come back to that shortly. But concerning China, maybe China will be seen to be a useful financier of the new canal. The ambassador spoke about, the professor spoke about the Montreux Convention regulating the passage in peace and in war. through the Bosporus and the Dardanelles, and there is a plan to build a new canal, which is, I think, very interesting, and it will cost some 15 or 20 billion US dollars. I've read somewhere, and maybe Chinese money will be usefully considered there. Speaking about one possible link, extending the Belt and Road perspectives, I think that China. We should remember that NATO, in its summit in Washington recently, did say more openly than has been the case before, and Turkey is part of that declaration, that there is a concrete blame put on China for its support for the Russian war effort in Ukraine, and that is highly significant, because for the European NATO countries, and I guess, well, we should include Turkey, of course, there if we talk about NATO. The issue of China is again a question of critical balance. The professor spoke rightly about Turkish foreign policy as a critical balance, a delicate balancing act, and I could not agree more. It's the only sensible thing to describe it, and also the only sensible foreign policy that Turkey, with its history and location and resources and ambitions, could conduct. In the case of China, the big issue is for Europe how to balance the certain assertiveness in the US, and the question of solidarity with the US as balanced to concrete material interests of having normal trade links and normal relations in various ways in European self-interest. So that is a critical balancing act. Now, we of course have, from the point of view of world peace, we have the issue of Taiwan as something very critical. And the question of whether the next few years will see open conflict or continued strategic ambiguity on the part of the US, not abandoning its one China policy rhetorically, but still making it fully credible that any mainland Chinese aggression against Taiwan would be met with military force by the US, and then keeping it strategically ambiguous what this means concretely and in what context exactly. And that, of course, influences the whole Southeast Asia, and in the midst of that you have the question of nuclear weapons and its proliferation and its modernization schemes, and you have the North Korean factor there also. What I'm saying now is that should there be a new administration in the US as a result of, well, you had Biden's shocking message yesterday, and the question of whether Kamala Harris will now be the nominee, and chances now maybe shifting chances. We will see whether it will be a question of a Trump administration returning to the White House now with the full experience of the first 4 years. What will it mean? What will that mean for US foreign policy? You have also Mr. Vance as a nominee for vice president, and his views on the Middle East, his views on China will have to be studied carefully. This is a parameter of high importance for NATO, for Turkey, for Indonesia. I mean, the shifting phases of US domestic and foreign policy will be a very important parameter. So, whereas China's importance cannot be overstated, it is becoming the most economically powerful country of the world, and its resources will be needed for resource poor countries. Turkey is resource poor in the energy side, which is one of its weaknesses, and therefore necessitating broader relations. The professor was talking about delicate balance, and if we are talking about Turkey as a north-south bridge, not only an east-west bridge, you asked about that, Jenny. It is a reminder that Turkey is indeed a very important bridge, also north-south, and it is dependent on supplies of oil and gas from Russia. It's dependent on the Russian technology for the build-up of the first nuclear power plant in Akkuyu on the south coast of Turkey, and there are plans for further power plants as a product of Turkey's consideration how to manage its energy needs for the future. There is also an agreement between the Tripoli part of the Libyan government concerning the delimitation of maritime borders in the Eastern Mediterranean. So there are all sorts of activities that Turkey needs to conduct and has been conducted in order to conduct concretely the balancing act. And there, of course, China is far away, but the Chinese issue will be coming closer to NATO, especially if Trump regains the rulership in the White House, and if, as a result of this, the questions both of the Ukraine war and the possible crises in the Southeast Asia will force upon Europe, including NATO Europe and including the EU, decisions which may be contradictory to the economic needs of those countries. And that will affect them. That will make Turkey's balancing act a little bit more difficult, I would predict. And I would very much look forward to the professor's comment to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Sahlin. I want to move on to the role that Turkey is playing in the region. And when we're talking about region, well, it is in many regions, multiple regions where it's in the central position of it. But in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia, through ASEAN-led mechanisms, we play a role as an architect. Of course, together with other middle powers, we set the terms on how the external powers behave in the region. We pioneer cooperation by certain mechanisms or initiatives, and Indonesia is playing that role in Southeast Asia. And what about Turkey in multiple regions that it belongs to? Which one it plays most active at? And Mithat.
There is a point I would like to start to touch the other regions as ASEAN or the Eastern partners of Turkey. This China's role, as the ambassador mentioned, the Canal Istanbul, I don't know, it's realistic to have such a kind of a canal in Turkey, in the Straits or Bosphorus. Who is gonna invest such a kind of a huge infrastructure project without bringing any additional, I don't know, value to Turkey's infrastructures? The connectivity, it's the buzzword, in fact, very lately in all those regions, and that makes China a factor. There are many projects, and Turkey sees itself in between East and West, North and South directions. Therefore, to develop those connectivity projects are very important for Turkish decision makers, as well as our neighboring regions. Now, the Middle Corridor, one of those very well known, to connect Europe towards China, or to East and West directions, to pass through the Caspian region, to link Turkey with Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkic republics, and then towards Europe. It's one giant project to bypass Russia as well. Therefore, the Middle Corridor, we call it, because North and South are problematic in terms of instabilities, and Turkey trying to play a role in between those regions. Not a bridge, but a central role. The other one is North-South connections. We have a couple of projects. Iraq, Syria, and other Middle Eastern countries are out of equation for a long while, but very lately, Turkey signed an agreement with the Iraqis to develop a new connectivity project. They call it, Turkey-Iraq Development Road, or dry canal project, therefore to link the Gulf region towards the north via Turkey to reach out Eastern European countries as well as all European actors. There are European projects, for example, linking the East towards the European markets via Israel and the others, what's going on in Israel and of course in Palestine now is making everything much more complicated. Therefore, these economic and financial projects and big connectivity infrastructure projects is getting attention from Turkish decision makers. Therefore, how to link the East and West? And for Turkey, as Asia's westernmost country and Europe's easternmost country, Turkey's relations with Asia has always been a key component of Turkey's multidimensional foreign policy. But we know less about the East Asia from our perspective. This is the narrative, or labeling is also a Western in Turkey. We never call it in a different way, but East Asia for Turkey and easternmost regions, and how to develop a multi-dimensional foreign policy. Turkey is, in fact, exploring all those regions very lately. Of course, based on Turkey's unique geopolitical and geographical position, deep-rooted historical and cultural ties with Asia, Turkey announced a new project, Asia, a new initiative, in August 2019. But because of pandemic and other instabilities, this vision is a kind of an introductory kind of a vision from Turkey. And Turkey is expanding its diplomatic corps all over the global environment and having the 5th largest diplomatic network globally. It's turning out to be 4th or 3rd in time. And Turkey is represented by many diplomatic consular places, and including all 10 ASEAN countries. But ASEAN is unknown for Turkey's investors and Turkey's decision makers, and how to capitalize Turkey's potential cooperation opportunities with Asian countries commensurate with evolving circumstances and needs is a big question mark. I see, for example, very lately, very active ambassadors and Turkish business circles in Indonesia, in Malaysia. Of course, Korea is very well-known destination for Turkey, but even Japan and China are newly invented regions for Turkey. And how those actors, the regional actors, sees Turkey is very important. Technically, we don't have any idea. And in Turkey, even the academic experts and all those pundits have no idea what's going on in the region and how those regions sees Turkey as a factor and actor, in the middle actor. This is a big question mark. There are different initiatives of Turkey focusing on improving Turkey's relations with those countries, ASEAN countries, through regional, sub-regional, and country-specific approaches based on common interests and objectives. But this Asia, a new initiative, prioritizes economic and trade cooperation with Asian partners. This is again connectivity, logistics, and transport. The defense industry cooperation, especially sharing technology and know-how. This is a priority for Turkey, and therefore the ASEAN countries are potential partners for Turkey, because we have some issues with the Western partners because of political connections and long history. And then is it possible to attract those new partners in different sectors, construction, logistics, green energy, digital technologies, finance, and cultural exchanges are open for Turkey. We don't have any prejudices, but the infrastructure and potential and capabilities are limited. How to find some other ways to move forward in the establishing much better relations with the ASEAN countries. And Turkey regards ASEAN as the most important framework of cooperation in the region, with its combined GDP amounting to the 7th biggest economy in the world and the 4th largest trading entity, and with the dynamic population of around 650 million, and located in the middle of strategic sea routes ASEAN is the key regional organization, of course, this from this perspective. But what about ASEAN countries' understanding of Turkey? This is also an important new development because, this is a new perspective. And is it possible to develop such a kind of a complicated relations to make Turkey much more autonomous or strong in terms of different partners? And therefore, this is a limitation, but we will see. It's not a closed option, and it's an emerging option. And Turkey's Cooperation and Development Agency is very active to touch upon the region. And Turkish ambassadors are very active to introduce Turkey and to introduce the region to Turkey as well. This is a kind of a reciprocal relations. But what, we need some time and, of course, efforts. And for the first time, for example, I had a chance to see Indonesia and Malaysia once, but, we are exploring those regions to establish better relations. Therefore, I just give high importance to such a kind of an activity that you are organizing to introduce both nations and both people or regions and to understand each other in a much comprehensive way.
Thank you, Professor Mithat. Let me go to Ambassador Sahlin. Ambassador, out of all the regions that Turkey is connected to, which one do you see it as most active? And if I may, also the question from YouTube, it is from Rizky from Indonesia. The question is, Turkey, does Turkey have a rivalry or strategic rivalry with certain regional players, or maybe other middle power? And I think it has to do as well with how far it can go when it comes to its role in shaping the architecture of the region.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that question. I would start by saying that to my big surprise, I'm a constant watcher of CNN news, among other channels, and in CNN there is every second minute almost commercials about Turkey. There must be some kind of deal. I don't know who paid what, but I mean, if you watch the Richard Quest's programs, for example, it's always Turkey, Turkish Airlines. It's all over CNN. It's amazing. So you have a good propaganda apparatus in CNN. I was wondering why. Jenny, I would point out now that there are, if you talk about rivalry, and I would focus now on the Middle East, because in the other strategic directions, it is sort of global implications, but regionally now, Middle East. The Middle East consists of 4 types of actors. One is the Arab states, and then there is Iran, and we haven't talked about Iran yet, but we need to talk about Iran. And then with a separate tradition and being not Sunni but Shia, and there is a large Shia minority in Iraq as well. So you have this intra-Muslim dimension and divides as well. And then there is Turkey. So 4 types of actors, and then of course Israel, Arab world, Iran, and Turkey. They are somehow they are what composes the Middle East. And in that circle, of course, Turkey has been seeking more friends and fewer enemies, avoiding splendid isolation. The MIT boss, Ibrahim Kalin, was coining the term that Turkey should avoid, which is splendid isolation or something, being friends with no one, not an asset, but a problem. In this case, I would say that rivalry, competition for regional leadership in the Middle East, it used to be Egypt, because Egypt is by far the biggest Arab country in terms of population, and it used to play a huge role, less so now. And there was an acute conflict between Turkey and Egypt for a while, as we all remember, when Sisi took power and the Morsi government was ousted, and that of course has everything to do with the Muslim Brotherhood and as a component of politics in the region. There was also a conflict with Saudi Arabia, not least over the Khashoggi affair when he was killed in Istanbul, and Erdogan was making a big CNN and other channels show of accusations against or holding the regime responsible for that killing. That has been somehow discreetly forgotten, and normalization has taken place, and not much talk about the Khashoggi affair any longer, to the bitterness of his wife, but that's something else. But then there is Iran, and Iran-Turkey relations I see as a key, as a typical example of what the professor was talking about when he talked about delicate balance, because the combined interest between Iran and Turkey, both being non-Arab Middle East countries, both having imperial history and proud being big countries, equally big in terms of population. I mean, it's more than a middle power. It's aspiring for global, at least, relevance in both cases. And then you have the complicated relations between Iran via Iraq, and then the Iranian-Russian links, the supply of Shahed missiles used frequently by Russia in its war fighting in Ukraine, versus Turkish drones helping Ukraine in the defense against Russian aggression. So very complicated links there. And I see that, therefore, or I should say, but in spite of this geopolitical difference and potential tension, there is some kind of normalization going on between Iran and Turkey. The professor mentioned the Astana process, Iran, Turkey, and Russia finding a way to harmonize competition and cooperation in Syria with the different national interests, which will affect also US and Russian policies in that region, how it is managed. So Turkish-Iranian relations is management of potential conflict in a way which seeks to avoid making that as a very problematic relationship. But you have the question of Iraq in between, and then Syria. So there can be no direct link between Iran and Turkey in terms of politics. It must have everything to do also with developments. For example, what about approachment between Ankara and Damascus as a way out of the dilemmas and the stalemates over Syria and all the incredible suffering that the Syrian people has and had to endure for so long time. What about Iran's role in promoting or preventing an approachment between Ankara and Damascus with the blessing of Russia? So complicated strategic links, and really a question of delicate balancing act. Normalization with Egypt, fine normalization with Saudi Arabia, keeping the balancing game with Iran, hoping to do something useful in Syria, but managing Israel in a way which will not close all doors to future normalization after some kind of exit of the big crisis over Gaza, and all the questions of what kind of settlements, also in relation between Iran and Israel, by the way, and what should be Turkey's role in that particular link. And behind all this, you have the US and its policies, and that's why I mentioned as a new factor, hoping to have your comments also, Mithat Bey, If there is a new administration in the US, what will be the policies there of a Trump and Vance administration? One can read into things that they have been saying, which should not be good news for Turkey concerning US policies in the Middle East generally and over Israel. So this will be, and then of course there are other links, but in terms of strategic rivalry, which I think was a question, then I should point to Iran as a critical balancing act, because Iran is a spoiler country, but it does not look upon itself as a spoiling country. It looks upon its policies, which are seen to be offensive by others, as self-defense of its interests. And that, of course, is guided by Chinese-Iranian, by the way, speaking about China, because there is a 25-year agreement between China and Iran, the impact of which we will see later on, because that also is linked to the China-Russia relationship and its development. So all sorts of complexities, making balancing acts really difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Sahlin. I want to go to Prof. Mithat on now on Turkey's view on the current world order, with a lot of debates, a lot of global discourse on saying, I think the liberal world order doesn't work anymore, particularly, especially among the saying, I think the liberal world order is get on the way out and it doesn't work for us anymore. Where is Turkey's stance on this? Is Turkey more of a pro-status quo, trying to make the status quo work out, or is it more like a revisionist in this case? And what about on the UN? Not only just the security-wise on the P5, but as well as on the economic aspect of the multilateralism and others. Professor Mithat.
Yes, Jenny, and Ambassador Sahlin's comments and questions are also closely related with this question, the world order. We see that there is a kind of a transition of rule-based international order. The main actors, especially Western actors, including Turkey, are very critical of the acts of Russia or some revisionist powers' attitude towards this rule-based international order. But, you know, there is a nuance between Turkey's position, Turkey's Western allies, especially Europe and the US. And Turkey was very critical of the current international system, especially the UN. You can easily hear many times from Erdogan when he visits the headquarters and give a talk in different environment or in different occasions. He says the world is much bigger than five. And that makes Turkey a kind of a revisionist actor. Turkey is also questioning the UN and UN system from the perspective of permanent members' attitude and perspective towards resolving all those global issues. This is a limitation. But, you know, what's going on? How to see a kind of a global change in the global world order? You know, Turkey most probably is not fond of such a kind of an actor like China or Russia controlling this transition. It's impossible. And therefore, how to make some other actors like global South countries, despite the fact that Turkish decision-making environment or academia do not like to label Turkey as a member of global South countries, because we see ourselves mostly in a Western liberal system. And this is a kind of a otherization again, and not we don't like such a kind of a alienation or otherization of Turkey from the decision-making apparatus. But on the other hand, Turkey tried to establish much better relations, for example, ASEAN or BRICS, or some other actors like Brazil, India, China, Indonesia, Malaysia, emerging actors. But, you know, we have limited connections and access. And how this transition will evolve, this is the question mark. And then Turkey turns its face towards its own regions again, once more. And then this the motto of increasing the number of friends and decreasing or the enemies, or more friends, fewer enemies, as the ambassador mentioned, is very important. And you cannot achieve such a kind of a position with a position of splendid or precious loneliness. As a lone wolf, it's a, I don't know, a term very famous in Turkey. To act as a lone wolf, you go nowhere. It's impossible. With a limited capacity and capability, I was mentioning in the beginning of my talk in the first question, Turkey is a middle actor, like you labeled, because, you know, we have limited capacity and capability. It's not a superpower like the US and a European Union as a whole. And therefore, we know our limits. And with these limits, you play the role of regional actor. And in this region, in different regions, Turkey is an actor in different regions, as we mentioned. For example, in the north, Russia is not a global actor for Turkey, a regional actor as well, because, you know, Russia is trying to shape all those regions and try to keep the status quo. Turkey is an anti-status quo power in all those regions, try to change the balance in the Caucasus and in the Black Sea, but in favor of Turkey. And when Turkey sees itself as a Western actor, Turkey's interests and Western interests are aligned. But if the Europeans says, for example, Turkey is not a Western actor, then it's an issue. But in this equation, you see last 2 decades, European Union expansion, there were 2 actors put as outside. One is Russia, the other one is Turkey. But those 2 are giants in the eastern parts of the European borders, if they are not European actors from the European perspective. Thanks God, Russia is anti-European, but Turkey is not anti-European actor. Turkey is trying to be a part of European network. And this is one thing. But in the Caucasus, it's different. In the Middle East, for example, the balance is totally different. Of course, Iran is a factor and actor that Turkey cooperates on some issues, but, you know, Iran is a rival as well. And now, after the new presidential election in Iran, many welcomed a Turkish, ethnically Turkish new president, Pezeshkian. But, you know, he's the part of Iranian or Persian system, and they are rivals. How to cooperate? How to shape those regions? Because, you know, the expectation and interest of Turkey is much more different than Iran. Iran's perspective of the Middle East is much more different than Turkey's expectations, and therefore this is also an issue. What about Israel, for example? In a Muslim population, and Israel was the most important partner for Turkey for more than 2-3 decades, and Ambassador Sahlin observed very closely in Ankara and other regions. But, you know, we lost our connection for some reasons. But, you know, in time, Israel is turning out to be a kind of an other for the international community as well. Many European governments and public opinions, even some circles in East Asia, in the US, are very critical of Israeli attitude. They go nowhere with such a kind of a harsh perspective and policies. And this is the case for Turkey. Therefore, how to shape our regions? It's a big question mark. They are unstable. You cannot predict for the near future. Turkey tried a couple of times. We have borders on the east, for example, still closed. We have no diplomatic relation with Armenia. With our border, I was telling those connectivity projects, but, you know, our borders with Armenia is closed. Our borders with Syria is big problematic issue. With Iraq, it's a serious issue. And therefore, Turkey needs to establish much peaceful environment and much more peaceful borders. And then afterwards, we may speak about much more important actor in a regional manner, a middle power. But, you know, we are facing with the similar issues like the European partners. Refugee issue. It's a chronic issue in Turkey. And we don't know the exact number. For some people, it's around 10 million. For some, it's 5 to 8 million. You know, 5 to 8 million is a huge number. Even 2 million is a huge number. And only in Istanbul, we have such a kind of an amount of immigrants, and it's impossible for Turkey to control it. Border issues, immigration, the war all over around, in Syria, in Iraq. They are not stable at all. In the north, in the Caucasus, and how to deal with all those issues. It's beyond a middle power. then Turkey needs some partners, whether European, whether North African, or Russia, or ASEAN countries, and how to create such a kind of a permanent and continuous relationship on the basis of mutual understanding and confidence building measures. This is a global issue. And if the global environment is unbalanced and if there is no rule-based international order, then it's an issue for middle powers. And then middle powers turn inside and try to be autonomous actors to follow, observe their own interests. And that creates some clashes between our traditional allies or neighboring countries. This is the dilemma of Turkey. And if you have some domestic issues as well, if you are polarized, if you do not trust each other, and the political parties are running each other, and if you are losing your democratic environment and rule-based domestic, structure, then it's gonna be issue. And that makes all those middle powers fragile. And this is the thing that Turkey is facing in those days, very severely and effectively.
Thank you, Professor Mithat. Let me get also Ambassador Sahlin's view on this to jump into the conversation.
Yeah, I was thinking, of course, but when you came to the issue of migration, then of course that has everything to do with the problems of politics also inside Europe, because the impact that happened in 2015-16, not least, by the way, to my country, because we took a very welcoming attitude at the time and received an incredible 163,000 refugees, mainly from Syria, during 1 year only. And we were praised, we and Germany were the ones praised by the openness and the welcoming attitude to the enormous influx at the time. And Sweden has become rather famous since then, not only from these negotiations with Turkey, but Turkey allowing Sweden to become a NATO member because of Russia, etc., etc., but also because we have had open signs of criminality, gang violence, shootings in the streets. Even my hometown Uppsala, which is a university town, used to be famous for other things. Now it's been famous for all this. It's not, of course, not only or solely related to migration, but it has something to do with integration problems of the migration openness at the time. And then, of course, the EU has been struggling first for having an agreement with Turkey in 2016, which was a give and take package deal, of which not all components have been implemented from the EU side. We have to admit, concerning, for example, customs union development, other things which would, or visa facilitation, things like this. It was seen to be a package. And then, of course, the EU pledging $6 billion as a sort of the worthwhile for things, for Turkey to do things which would help Turkey guarantee a non-continuation of this constant flow. And I see this as the price Turkey has to pay for being this bridge that we talked about from other aspects before, because there is this link. If you don't go via Turkey from the whole Asian and African continents, you have to pass the Mediterranean, and that is lethally dangerous to do. So there's a big dilemma, and a lot of EU policies and a lot of policies inside European countries with the extreme right emerging as more important, even inside government in the case of some countries. Take France, for example. And in parallel, in the US, you have the enormously important issue of migration there also, framing the political life of the country in a way. So globally speaking, I know that UNHCR is nowadays talking about 110 or so million refugees that would like to come to either Europe or to the US if they can, to the extent they can. And of course, European policies now deal with how to protect Europe from further such influences and how to continue negotiations with Turkey concerning cooperation. And that is one of the things that making normal relations between Turkey and the European Union essential because of demographic necessities, I should say. So we have this as one dimension. It's not only via Turkey; it's also the fact that Russia has been seen to be exploiting migration as a hybrid weapon, helping migrants from northern Iraq coming into Finland via Russia, for example, in an unorganized way, which has compelled Finland to build fences which were unthinkable in the past, and similar with Poland. So that all, and Jenny, this is for me the biggest link between the East-West and the North-South dimensions of geopolitics in the world now. And since you have the North Korean and the Taiwan issues and everything, which makes for the US a big dilemma how to balance reassurance with deterrence, and what are the views of the new administration in the US, if there is one, about these things. And our security and welfare depends on the outcome of those.
Thank you, Ambassador Sahlin. That's an interesting point. The time is up, but let me close this with one question coming from YouTube. I think it's an important one as well to discuss because Indonesia and Turkey, we're both in MIKTA, Professor Mithat. Question is, what will be the future of MIKTA from Herza from YouTube? I think just briefly about that to as well close the discussion, Professor Mithat.
In fact, I don't know, but because, Turkey has concern within own regions. That's the point that I would like to raise. And in this region, the issues are so severe, and how those MIKTA and the other institutions or regional, sub-regional organizations will contribute to the stability and to resolve the issues of all those member countries is a big question mark. And the global actors or the big powers have a potential to contribute very positively. And then if the middle powers get together and to offer some solutions of the expectations and the security issues of all those actors, it will help and they will survive. If not, there are empty institutions and organizations, and there are Turkey-led regional initiatives. They are there, they are still alive, but they could contribute very limited manner in the resolution of issues and expectations of all the member nations. Therefore, those are the institutions. It's up to the individual countries when they get together. If they put some, asset within the institution, then they may contribute very positively for the future of the institution and the member countries' interest as well. But I don't know the details of MIKTA. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Prof. Mithat. With that, I'll close the discussion. It's been very insightful. So thank you very much, Ambassador Sahlin, Professor Mithat. I think this central player role of Turkey, be it geographic-wise or geopolitical-wise, its position-wise, is interesting for us to look deeper, especially in us as well. FPCI Middle Power Studies Network, we're diving deeper constantly into Turkey as an interesting country to look at. So once again, thank you very much for the insights, Ambassador Sahlin, for Mithat. We hope to engage you again in our future discussion. So with this, I'm giving back the floor to the MC, Ziza.
Thank you, Jenny, for moderating today's discussion. And thank you to all the distinguished speakers, Professor Mithat and Ambassador Sahlin, for sharing your valuable insights. Ladies and gentlemen, today's discussion is available for rewatch on FPCI official YouTube channel at Secretariat FPCI. We also would like to notify you on Wednesday, we will hold a global town hall series on the US and European de-risking strategy. You may register through the link in the chat box. Thank you everybody for tuning in. You can follow our social media handles for more information about our activities, events, and programs at Instagram and X at FPC Indo. Please stay tuned at MPSM Virtual Public Forum. See you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you. And talk to you again, Mithat.